part two of tonight's story is also about Justin Trudeau and the impending trade war with America. A trade war that I'm not sure how Canada, with its 40 million population against the most powerful country in the world, will fare. But I guess we'll have to find out, because maybe this is coming soon, right? So I'm sure you guys have heard that Trump threatened to put 25% tariffs on goods incoming from Canada if we don't do anything about the border, right? And at first people are kind of surprised. It's like, oh, like he's talking about the northern border too. Apparently, according to Trump, there is a big problem with drugs, specifically fentanyl, coming in from Canada to the US. So maybe we can have a discussion later about how like big of an issue that is and whether or not that is a real issue or Trump's just making stuff up. But regardless, this threat of 25% tariffs was put out. And then this scared Trudeau so much that he flew to Mar-a-Lago in Miami to have dinner with Trump to try and like talk him down from it. According to Trudeau, the dinner went perfectly, right? Like it's kind of almost like a Trump-esque response, right? Like people ask Trudeau, how did the dinner go? It's like, oh, it was a perfect conversation. It was a perfect phone call. You remember the perfect phone call thing, like with the 2020 election? It was kind of like a response. He didn't do it in that voice, of course, but he said it was a perfect dinner. There was a productive conversation. But then Trump started trolling Trudeau on Truth Social. So here's a tweet that he put out, right? So Trump's been joking that maybe Canada should just become the 51st state of the United States because Canada's ripping off like the US so much with unfair trade, and then the US is subsidizing Canada with like all these trade benefits. Maybe Canada should just join. They're gonna take up so much resources from the United States. Maybe they should just join the United States. So he made a joke where he called Justin Trudeau Governor Trudeau from the great state of Canada. Obviously this was meant for a joke, or maybe it's not. Maybe he actually wants to annex and invade Canada, but it's stirred some controversy in Canada. Trudeau, in response, he wanted to punch back, right? So people asked him, how exactly are you going to kind of punch back against this threat of the 25% tariffs if it was implemented? And Trudeau's like, oh, we're going to do counter tariffs, right? We're going to put tariffs on things like bourbon, Harley Davidsons, playing cars, Heinz ketchup, and cherries. Here's the kind of state of things, right? So here's my kind of couple of questions to you guys. Number one, what do you guys think of this like Canada joining the US idea? Do you think Trump is serious? I think there was a story a while ago during his first term that he wanted to buy Greenland. Maybe he is part of that like Manifest Destiny group and he wants to annex Canada. Like how much credence should we put to this thread of like, apparently he wants to take over Canada, and how should Canada deal with this like joke or this threat, if at all? But more importantly, the 25% tariffs thing, I think he's not joking about that, or maybe he is joking and we can have a discussion, but I don't think he's joking about that. If Canada, or if the US puts 25% tariffs on Canada, how should Canada respond? Can we respond? Do you think Trudeau's idea of putting counter tariffs on the US would work? And how do we, or maybe better yet, how do we kind of avoid this situation in the first place? Preferably, should we just give in and give Trump what he wants, or what's kind of the solution to that? So, multi-part question, multi-part story. Anyone wants to take it away?
Trump just has this like troll. Like his like this is like a negotiating tactic he uses on the tariffs, like 25% tariffs on all of this. Obviously, that would be horrible for the Canadian economy. I'm rooting for Canada to like negotiate something that doesn't result in 25% tariffs. I'm rooting for Trudeau on this one, so I hope he figures it out, because that would be devastating. I don't think that like tariffs on cherries and Harley Davidsons are going to move the needle. The United States economy is very diverse. They could take a few hits, and I just don't think there's enough Harleys and cherries crossing to the Canadian border really do much damage to the U.S. So yeah, I mean we're completely screwed if we actually go into a trade war. Like we just can't win that. The only good thing about going into a trade war is that there would be some American industries that would probably be hurt by it, that would likely lobby their government to give exemptions to Canadian, like whatever resources coming through the border. But in the end, I just assume that this is Trump being Trump. This is a negotiating tactic. He's putting tariffs on everybody, and then he's like setting the agenda, and he's telling Trudeau that he wants us to control the border. The one thing I'll say about the border is that, like, I have been seeing before this news story came out, I have been seeing this incidence of Canadian, people with expired visas crossing the border into the United States. There's been a few instances where people on their property have shown people walking across the border into America. Like, I think that's one of the things where Canada, like our politicians, have to be careful, because Canadians do like order. Canadians are like, I don't know if anybody who's watching this show is not Canadians, but like Canadians really like order, and they like things to just work as they're intended. And like having people like illegally crossing our border, even whether they're going into the United States or back, is just not something the Canadians are going to be okay with. So like, I think it's an opportunity for Canada to actually do something about that problem. We shouldn't be having this. And I think that in light of the situation where Canada has brought in like something like 2.5, 3.5 million temporary immigrants that will have their visas expire, and our immigration crisis might actually be spilling over to the United States now. So like, I don't think it's a good place for it's a bad negotiating position for Canada to get started on. So like, get the border situation under control. I think that's actually a reasonable thing for Trump to demand from Trudeau. In terms of the trolling about them invading us, again, I think I'm taking it as a troll and a joke. I don't think Trump is actually going to invade Canada. I hope I'm right about that. If he does invade Canada, I guess we're going to lose. And I just hope that at least we'll get on that US dollar as soon as possible, if that's the case. I think that basically the way that Trump is trolling Trudeau is he kind of sees him as like a poster boy of the international like leftist elite, and he's also kind of like he's like a poster boy of like the international woke politics. So it's good like social media engagement strategy to like troll the hell out of this guy, because it's gonna make all the anti-woke people online happy. Going after Trudeau is like an easy target for that, and I think Trump's just having fun and kind of just like basically telling Trudeau, like, I have no respect for you. You're like the opposite of my like, you're the opposite of the political aisle. You're part of the annoying woke people, and like, I'm just setting you straight, and there's a new agenda for the West, and you better get on board, and I'm going to keep trolling you until you do. And I'm going to keep threatening 25% tariffs until you get on board with the new agenda. I think that's just kind of like Trump's style, his abrasive style. He's an abrasive guy. We all know that. It's, I kind of supported the Trump candidacy this election, but I think his abrasiveness is like one of his weak points. It sometimes makes him put his foot in his mouth, and he gets himself into trouble that is kind of unnecessary.
That one clip of you saying I'm rooting for Trudeau, that's going in the intro, by the way. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what you said there, Sunil. I think that, I think part of it is also that Trump is just treating Trudeau like what he is, which is a lame duck prime minister. So I'm not sure if you would agree with that statement, but it's pretty clear to not just Canadians, but just to this point, people internationally, that Trudeau has lost the mandate. So if it really makes sense what Trump is doing in retrospect, if you look at it from that lens, because it's like, why would I talk to this guy who's not going to be prime minister very soon, and make him any promises or negotiate with him in any way, because like he's literally going to be out. So if I strike an agreement with him, then it's not going to count when the new government comes in. And like Trump's, like, contrary to popular belief, Trump is not dumb. Like, he can read a poll, right? Like, there's polls that are coming out every weekend that's showing the liberal support going down and down, and showing the conservative majority getting bigger and bigger. And I don't think that that's going to reverse soon. Certainly not with $250. Like it's not enough to push Canadians like to vote for Trudeau again. So it's like, why negotiate with this guy, right? Somebody raised their hand.
Yeah, I that's a good point with the lame duck thing. It's like, yeah, he's a lame duck prime minister, and I think that is like you can even make the argument that Trump's scoring points with 50% of Canadians by like dressing him down and like just completely embarrassing him and completely showing him complete disrespect. Arguably, like this is actually making like Canadians like, oh yeah, like show this guy, just embarrass this guy. Like there's like 50% of the population that might be like happy that Trump is embarrassing this guy. So and if we get invaded, I'll take all my words back. But I hope that we're right about that.
Yeah, no, good points. Last thing I'll add, and then I'll throw it to Tristan. The 25, the counter tariffs to the 25% tariff threat, where Trudeau said he's gonna put counter tariffs on things like bourbon, Harley Davidsons, and playing cards and ketchup. That's like throwing an egg against the Himalayan mountains to try and move the mountains. Like it's such a big like power in like difference disparity that like the fact that he proposed this as a potential way to counter and to like try and scare off Trump from making like this actually a reality, the fact that he even put that out as a potential solution, I think just further goes to show his like disconnect from reality, right? Like you have to be delusional to think that Trump is going to back down from a tariff threat because you threatened to counter tariff ketchup. Like do you think Trump cares about ketchup? Like I heard he puts ketchup on his steak, so maybe he cares, but I doubt it. Tristan, your thoughts?
It's pretty clear that Canada would not win a trade war with the US. That's dreaming. I don't know why Trudeau wants to try and pretend like he is such a powerful guy and that he can actually potentially do something by suggesting that he'll put tariffs on American goods as if it will move the needle in the slightest. I think that's just posturing. Even if America did put tariffs on us, there wouldn't be that much going on from our end to putting tariffs on them, I would say, because again, we would be desperately trying to convince the US to remove its tariffs as quickly as possible, because US tariffs on Canadian goods would be much more detrimental than the other way around. And on that front, like I don't think that Trump is going to annex Canada ever. And honestly, the real reason that comes down to is that the Americans really don't want 40 million more Democrats, And I'm not saying that all Canadians would be Democrats, but we are lefter leaning than the American population in general. So even if they get 30 million more Democrats, or even 25 million more Democrats, like that's still too many more Democrats for a Republican to really want to annex us. So I just think that on that front, the threat of a annexation from Trump is basically a nothing burger. There's just no way it's actually going to happen. And honestly, we probably put up a pretty decent fight, just based on the logistics. Canada is very difficult to invade. There is a reason we weren't annexed in the last time we fought America. So I understand we have much bigger equipment, but we would be expensive to invade. As probably the bigger factor, not so much the difficulty. We'd obviously lose, but we would be expensive to defeat compared to how much it would cost on our end. But anyway, Zillennial, toss back.
I actually was just going to make a joke. It's like 30 million Democrats moving to Florida all at once. Could you imagine that? Because like everybody, all the Canadians are like, let's get out of this weather. Let's go somewhere warm. We'd all just drive to Florida. It would be amazing. Just like, oh yeah. We don't have to go through customs anymore.
Yeah. Well, it'll just move to literally anywhere. Oh, let's hit up California. California prices compared to Toronto or Vancouver. Why am I dealing with the winter? might as well have sunny all year round. And if I got to pay $2 million for my house, well, I was already paying $2 million for my house. So what's the difference?
It is rather unfortunate, though, that I encountered a statistic that the per capita income of the average Canadian is tied with the poorest state in the U.S., which is Mississippi. So that's kind of a depressing fact that the average Canadian is just as rich as a person from the poorest state out of 50 states in the U.S. So yeah, I mean we're obviously not in a strong position economically, and even if we were, we would still lose a trade war with the U.S. So it's just I think as the prime minister, Trudeau, like if he's gonna be the prime minister because he's refusing to step down and refusing to have an election, fine, we'll have to wait. And he's the prime minister right now. I think he should do all he can to avoid having Trump put 25% tariffs on us, because that would be absolutely disastrous. And I think there's things that he could do, right? Just quite frankly, just give Trump what he wants, right? If Trump wants the border wants us to spend more on the border to patrol the border, if that means we can avoid getting the tariff slapped on us, I think that money is well spent, right? Zillennial, you want to say something?
Did you see what Stephen Harper said to Jean Chrétien about this controversy just a couple of days ago? Stephen Harper and Jean Chrétien were at some kind of like thing where they were talking about their time as prime minister, like pat on the back, they used to be opponents, now they're friends, kind of with those kinds of things. And Stephen Harper's line, because he was talking about how like Canada is in such a weak spot because of Trudeau and some a lot of the decisions we made, and like economically we're in such a weak position. His line, which was just kind of, it hit hard. He just said he went to Jean Chrétien and said, "Me or you were prime minister, we wouldn't if we and he threatened us with his tariffs, we wouldn't even have to go down to talk to him." And he's just kind of like pushing how Trudeau's just like a weak leader. And like the first thing he does is he gets off the plane and says, "You're going to destroy our economy if you do this." Like it's such a weak position to get started from. And I think a lot of that has to do with the last 9 years of having liberals in power. I don't believe Stephen Harper would have walked into Mar-a-Lago and said that line. And I don't even like Stephen Harper as a prime minister.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly something when I saw the news of Trudeau going to Mar-a-Lago. Like, was it like 1 or 2 days after the tariff threat was first put out? And it's very clear that it's just like a scene from The Godfather, right? Where he's just going down there to kiss the ring. And there's two sides of this, right? Obviously, there's a side where people who support Trudeau are like, oh, look at how like proactive he is, right? He's like proactively trying to solve this problem before it gets too big. And I want somebody who like is on the ball to like solve this problem. But then like obviously on the other side, and I think that it's pretty clear that I'm on the other side of this camp, that it just makes us look weak, right? It's very clearly just going there to kiss the ring. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's gonna work or what this tariff thing is gonna turn out to be, but we'll have to see.